My name is Alara Voss, and I'm 31. On the morning of my wedding, my father's name appeared on my phone for the first time in 9 years. My dress hung from the closet door. The 3-tier cake I had baked the night before cooled in the venue kitchen. Then my phone buzzed. Dad, 9 years earlier, my stepsister, Mara, told our parents I was selling drugs. They believed her without checking. Within a week, my duffel bag sat on the front porch. But before I tell you what my father wrote on my wedding morning, you need to know what happened before that door closed. I grew up in Millbrook. My mother died when I was 13, and 2 years later, Dad married Celeste, who already had a 9-year-old daughter, Mara. I wanted desperately to keep our new family together, so I became the easy child. Good grades, chores finished early, a part-time job at 14. I learned that the person who caused the least trouble was usually the person nobody protected. At 21, I earned a scholarship to a pastry program. It should have been my proudest moment. Instead, Mara hurt herself with a craft blade, and the entire household immediately revolved around her. The dinner celebrating my scholarship was canceled. Nobody mentioned my achievement again. That night, Dad stopped me in the hallway. "I have to protect this family," he said. I was 21 and still believed love was something you could earn by staying agreeable. So I quietly continued my pastry training. By 22, I worked 2 jobs and saved nearly $4,000. Every bill came from honest work, waitressing, stocking shelves, and baking cakes for birthdays and church events. I even bought a cheap second phone so customers could place orders. Then Mara saw my savings. "Where did all that come from?" she asked. I told her the truth. 3 weeks later, everything collapsed. Celeste discovered her missing prescription sedatives in my dresser, beneath my sweaters. Mara was called into the living room, crying. She claimed I had been selling drugs around town and that the second phone was for buyers. My father placed my envelope of savings on the coffee table like evidence. I showed them pay stubs, bank records, and proof of my shifts. I offered to take a drug test immediately. It didn't matter. They had already chosen who they believed. Friday, I came to find my duffel bag waiting beneath porch light. My father opened the door, but never looked at me again. I left that house with 1 suitcase, $200, and a phone number for a woman named Rosa Mercer. Rosa owned a tiny bakery in Harwick. She had once tasted one of my lemon cakes at a church fundraiser and told me I had hands that understood butter. I didn't understand what she meant then. I understood 9 years later. Rosa gave me a job washing dishes. 3 months later, she let me decorate cakes. Eventually, she taught me everything she knew. I worked until my hands cracked, slept in a room above the bakery, and saved every dollar. For the first time, my life belonged completely to me. Then I met Noah. He was a carpenter who always knocked before entering my apartment, even when I had specifically told him he didn't need to. "I know," he said once, "but you deserve to decide who comes through your door." That sentence stayed with me. 2 years later, he proposed by hiding my engagement ring inside a box of instant yeast. "That's where I keep everything important," he said. I laughed so hard I cried. Meanwhile, back in Millbrook, my family carried on without me. My father never called. My stepmother, Celeste, occasionally sent messages through relatives. They were never apologies. They were reminders that Mara was struggling, that I should let the past go, and that families sometimes made mistakes. But nobody ever admitted what they had done. Then, 9 years after I was thrown out, Rosa called me after closing. Her voice sounded different. "Alara," she said quietly, "you need to sit down." I did. She told me that Mara had finally confessed the drugs had been planted. The second phone had never belonged to a dealer. It had been used for cake orders. The money in my savings account came entirely from my jobs. Every accusation had been a lie. I stared at the wall while Rosa explained that Mara had confessed nearly everything to her cousin Beth, who had finally broken down and told Rosa. There should have been relief. Instead, I felt strangely empty. 9 years. My father had believed a lie in one night. It had taken 9 years for the truth to reach him. And the worst part? He already knew. For an entire month, my father had known I was innocent. He still hadn't called. No apology, no explanation, nothing. I went upstairs that night and found Noah wiping down an already clean kitchen counter. "I'm innocent," I whispered. He stopped, then he put down the cloth, walked over, and held me. I cried against his shoulder until there were no tears left. The next morning, I opened the bakery at 5, because the truth had changed my past. But it didn't get to control my future. Then August arrived. And so did the messages from my family. They wanted me to forgive Mara. They wanted me to heal. They wanted me to remember that family was family, but nobody asked what 9 years had cost me. And then, one October morning, my father finally sent me a message. It arrived exactly 1 hour before my wedding. "Dad!" I stared at that single word on my screen. Then another message appeared. And this one changed everything. The first message from my father was only 6 words. "I know the truth now, Alara." I read it twice, then a third time. My hands began shaking. Another message appeared. "Mara confessed. Everything she said about you was a lie." For 9 years, I had imagined hearing those words. I had imagined anger, tears, maybe even an apology. Instead, I felt nothing. Then his final message arrived. "Please forgive me. I want to come to your wedding and walk you down the aisle." I looked at the clock. 1 hour. My wedding dress was hanging behind me. My shoes were beside the bed. Rosa was downstairs, organizing the last details. I could have answered immediately. Instead, I sat there, remembering the porch, the duffel bag, my father's expression, the way he had refused to meet my eyes. 9 years earlier, I had begged him to believe me. Now, 1 hour before my wedding, he wanted to become my father again. I typed a response, deleted it. Typed another, deleted that too. Finally, I wrote, "You believed her in one night. It took you 9 years to believe me. I don't have another 9 years to give you." I stared at the words, then I added, "You may come if you want, but you will not walk me down the aisle." I pressed send. The message showed as delivered. No response came. Rosa found me 10 minutes later. She took one look at my face and understood. "He called?" I nodded. "Is he coming?" "I don't know." She squeezed my hand. "Then let him decide what kind of man he wants to be. You have a wedding to live." That was exactly what I needed to hear. For weeks, I had struggled with the 2 empty chairs in the front row. Everyone assumed they were meant for my father and stepmother. But I had made another decision. One chair would hold a framed photograph of my grandmother Ruth, the woman who had taught me to bake before she died. The other would hold her old recipe box, That box had survived everything. So had I. When the ceremony began, Rosa stood beside me. She was nervous enough to keep checking the notes written on her palm. "You ready?" she whispered. I looked toward the closed barn doors. "No," I admitted. She smiled. "Good. Nobody is." The doors opened. Music filled the room. 80 people stood. I took my first step, then another. And with every step toward Noah, I realized something. I wasn't walking toward the family I had lost. I was walking toward the life I had built. Noah was waiting at the end of the aisle, tears already running down his face. I smiled. For the first time in 9 years, I wasn't waiting for my father to choose me. I had already chosen myself. The ceremony passed in a blur. I remember Noah's face more clearly than anything else. When I reached him, he took both my hands and whispered, "You made it." I almost laughed. I did. We said our vows beneath warm strings of lights, while the people who had actually stood beside me filled the room. Rosa cried. My bakery crew cried. Noah's grandmother cried so hard she had to pretend something was stuck in her eye. And the 2 chairs in the front row remained exactly as I had arranged them. One held Grandma Ruth's photograph, the other held her recipe box. There was no chair for my father, not because I wanted to punish him, because he had already surrendered that place 9 years earlier. After the ceremony, we celebrated until sunset. Then the DJ announced our first dance. Noah and I moved slowly across the floor while everyone watched. When the song ended, Rosa stepped forward. The DJ smiled and announced, "The bride will now dance with the woman who gave her a chance when nobody else would." Rosa immediately covered her face. I laughed through my tears. She took my hand. As we danced, I looked across the room, and for 1 second, I searched for my father. I knew he wasn't there. Still, some old part of me expected to see him standing in the doorway. He wasn't. And surprisingly, I was okay. Later that night, Beth approached me. She had been the person who finally exposed Mara's confession. "I need to tell you something," she said. My stomach tightened. "Your father came." I froze. "What?" He stood outside for almost 20 minutes. He didn't come inside. I looked toward the barn doors. "Why?" Beth shook her head. "He said he finally understood that showing up wasn't the same as being a father." For the first time that day, I felt something break inside me. Not anger, not sadness. Something softer. Something I had been carrying for 9 years. I didn't go looking for him. I didn't call. I didn't send another message. Because forgiveness wasn't the same as reopening the door. I could forgive someone and still protect the life I had built. Noah found me outside beneath the lights. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah." He wrapped an arm around my shoulders. Behind us, everyone was laughing, dancing, and eating the cake I had baked myself. I looked back at the barn. 9 years ago, my family had decided I didn't belong. That night, I finally understood something. They had been wrong. I didn't need their permission to belong anywhere. I belonged with the people who believed me, with the woman who gave me my first job, with the man who knocked before entering my door, with the friends who stayed, with the grandmother whose recipe box had survived everything, and most importantly, with myself. My father had spent 9 years deciding whether I was worth believing. I spent those same 9 years becoming someone who no longer needed his approval. That was the real ending, not revenge, not a public humiliation. just a quiet truth. He lost a daughter the night he chose a lie, and I found a family the day I chose myself.